Welcome everybody to this special recording of What's It Gonna Take. My name is Alex Piñeres, Director of Programs at Levine Museum of the New South. And this is a special recording for What's It Gonna Take because we're also celebrating Welcoming Week. And we are not only talking about issues affecting our community, but we're also celebrating tonight. And that's why we're also in this special place, good partners of Levine Museum of the New South. So before we do our conversation with our speaker for the evening, I just want to let them introduce themselves and the space that we're in this new phase of Levine Museum going to meet the community where they are. So I'll let Tash tell us a little bit about MacFly.
Taj Polite, MacFly. Thank you for the introduction, Alex. I want to welcome you guys on behalf of MacFly. We are a screen printing shop here, but we're so much more. We talk about Welcoming Week. I want to welcome you to our home. This is like our second home. We didn't set out to spend all our hours here, but this is a second home. So this is my brother. When we set out on this journey, we were just college kids. And so we were going from the dorms to the garages to the sweatshops, for lack of a better word, to here. And being welcomed and being home is something we want to communicate to you guys through using our space tonight. So I'm honored that Alex asked us for the place to use, and I really want to introduce you to my brother Dello, co-owner of MacFly. Fresh to death, fresh off the boat, however you want to put it.
Yes, exactly right.
I think he was better to represent
Yes.
what it means.
And as to piggyback what Todd said, like this is our home. And my parents from the Congo made Charlotte their home as being immigrants from the Congo. So it feels great for this to be full circle, to be doing Welcoming Week in our space. This is also now you guys' home as well. So being the son of two fly immigrants, we also have this screen printing activation set up for you guys. Well, I already set one up here. So you'll be able to screen print your own poster after the event as well, representing the fly immigrants in the Charlotte colorway too as well. So we are from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, but we also flipped it to mean daily rep in Charlotte. And today you got the daily rep in Charlotte as immigrants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And if you're familiar with sort of our apparel from Levine Museum of the New South, for example, the No Justice, No Peace t-shirt that a lot of folks love from Levine Museum, it was done right here on that oven. So one of the many partnerships that Levine Museum has been doing over the years with MacFly Fresh screen printing. And now we would like to welcome our speaker for the evening. And I will read a little bit about his bio so you guys know a little bit about Federico Rios. So Federico Rios is the Assistant Director in the City of Charlotte's Housing and Neighborhood Services Department, more specifically the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Immigrant Integration. It is a very long title, but it's a much needed title as well. So, but I'll let Federico tell you a little bit more about the work that he does. And a interesting thing about Federico, which you might not see in the official biography, is that he is also the son of an immigrant mother. So it is also, just like Della was saying, full circle to celebrate Welcoming Week here is also very special to celebrate Welcoming Week with Federico. So in his role, he started helping to eliminate systemic barriers. Before joining the city, he spent 8.5 years with Communities in Schools Charlotte Mecklenburg as the founder director of the Newcomer Services. In partnership with Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, Federico created a case management model to serve newly arrived and often highly traumatized Central American youth. Federico has felt this as a calling for his work because he's also somebody that comes from a mental health and education background. So I think having somebody in the city leading this sort of effort that not only talks about the needs of the immigrant community, but can also think about the trauma that goes when you're moving into a whole new country. So without further ado, Federico, thank you for joining us. So, Federico, I know we have a few questions for you that relate more to your work, but I think before we get started, we wanted to talk a little bit about Welcoming Week. And Welcoming Week, for folks that don't know, is a national celebration put together by Welcoming America, a nonprofit. And in May, they celebrated their conference here in Charlotte and designated Charlotte as a welcoming city, the first in the Southeast. And folks might not know much about what does that mean. So I think before we jump into some of the questions, if you don't mind explaining to us a little bit of what it means to be a welcoming city, why is it important for the Charlotte, and maybe some highlights of what it took to get that destination.
Good evening, everybody, and happy Welcoming Week. So as far as being a certified welcoming city, we have the unique distinction of being the first city in the Southeast to actually become certified welcoming. And the certification process is really an audit. So it's Welcoming America, the national nonprofit organization that works with municipalities to ensure that they are inclusive and really ensuring that they are providing services that ensure the integration of immigrant communities in municipalities. They review all of our systems, all of our processes, how we engage with our community, how the community in turn engages with us as a municipality, how we work jointly to achieve our values and commitment to serve the immigrant community as a whole. So it's in depth. One of the interesting things when we became a certified welcoming city is that, you know, I'd see posts celebrating that we're welcoming, and then I'd see comments underneath. There's a danger in reading comments, right? But there was comments like, oh, this is us clapping ourselves on the back. Oh, we paid for this. No. Federico spent a lot of time. Federico's office spent a great deal of effort ensuring that we as a city were providing services and resources to our immigrant community members in an equitable fashion. This was earned, not just given.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think a little bit of that is what we wanted to understand, because of course we see the posts, we see the signs around town, and it was a good celebration. Also at the conference with the mayor being there to celebrate Charlotte as a welcoming city, but obviously we never see the background and how much effort goes into having that type of destination for the city of Charlotte. So I want to touch a little bit about sort of the things that you have seen in your work about in terms of challenges that create roadblocks for our immigrant community. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit into what are some of the steps maybe that the city has taken to address those challenges that you had noticed affect our community here in Charlotte.
Yeah, I'll offer a bit of a historic perspective. So the city in 2013 and 14, I want to see 2013 and 14, began a process where they called together a group of community members to form a task force. Charlotte is famous for task forces, right? We do that really well. And so they bring together this task force to really dive in deep around immigrant integration. And through that process, which was really holistic and went in depth, not just with the things that the city needed to do, but what needed to occur amongst philanthropic groups at the state level, just a multifaceted, really deep engagement and review. They ended up putting together this report that provided recommendations. Well, I come on board in 2018, and some of the recommendations have moved forward. A lot of them had kind of just sat still. And so first and foremost, the city created my office. And at the time, when I came on board, the office was the Office of International Relations, which had a focus on international business and immigrant integration. Now, it's important to recognize that as a city, and this is not unique to Charlotte, this has happened in a lot of other communities, the value of immigrants is related to business, right? It's that economic value, not necessarily the human perspective. And so leading with that international business piece, though important, really showed how so much of the work had been based on return on investment versus really acknowledging the humanity of people and the need to support them and make them feel like they were a part of a place, that they were welcomed. And so through that process, my office gets created again as an acknowledgement. In all honesty, the office was also created because a group of community advocates shut down a city council meeting because they were very angry about immigration and customs enforcement, committing a great deal of arrests in the community, and they decided that they were going to make their voice heard at a city council meeting. And so that action directly leads to the creation of the office that I'm in. So that was step one for the city, the report, then the office being created. Step two was really working at my end to better understand where the pain points for the community, making sure that we're getting through those recommendations that had already been listed, but where are the pain points and what are the things within my purview that we can impact? So we spent a great deal of time really understanding, helping people understand the form of government that we have. What we find with a lot of people across the board is people come from a lot of places to Charlotte. Charlotte is a place that I would venture to say is probably a majority of people that weren't raised here at this point, that come here, and they come with preconceived notions about how government functions. So I'm originally from Queens, New York. I thought this was a strong mayoral government because I didn't understand that other cities had other forms of government. And so helping community members, educating them through a process to best understand how our system works, where they can plug in, how they can advise and provide input, doing policy work, really diving in deep around language access, and what's the, not just the pathway for language access, but what's our plan holistically as a city. Again, first time language access is referenced in a city report is 1993. It's 2022, we just got a policy passed 6 months ago, right? So that just speaks to a lot of things delayed, denied, again, the value not necessarily seen.
Perfect. Thank you for that insight. And we love a good historical perspective at Levine Museum, so I'm glad you also walk us through some of the things that happened not too long ago with community organizers and folks in the community shutting down a government, that's government as working, because essentially what those community members did created this office. And with such a young office as well, are there some areas that you feel others can come in? I think that the city alone cannot address all the issues affecting the immigrant community in Charlotte, so I'm wondering if there's some areas that you have noticed that community organizations, cultural institutions, whatever it may be, can fill in the gap where the city cannot maybe reach the most, those in need.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's a lot that we can do, right? And I think we've done that with some of the policy changes. So I go back a step, and there was a time when I first came on board with the city where it was stated in our policy that in order to serve on a board or commission of the city of Charlotte, you had to be a U.S. citizen. That's incredibly exclusionary, right? There's a lot of individuals, you could serve in the military and not be a citizen, but you can't serve on this board or commission and not be a citizen. So there was this disconnect, right? So we were able to work through that and help address that. It took community voice to get us there. So it was really that continual providing of input, that continue referencing, hey, my office serves as a liaison for immigrant community organization and members. So it's really us hearing from the community to be able to move those things. I think on a larger scale, what I'd love to see, not only nonprofits, faith communities, others, is really engage in advocacy. What are the things that I alone can't shout into the wind, right? Again, as a community, since 2006, we've been fighting for driver's licenses for undocumented residents. We've gotten nowhere in all this time. 16 years of not getting anywhere. So how do we put that as a primary focus for all the organizations that serve those individuals and recognize for their benefit, for our community benefit, they should have access to this basic right. So it's that continued advocacy piece. It's ensuring that we're really helping people understand the power of their vote I mean, if you just saw the last election, we had some seats decided by 500 or less votes. So the power that individuals have, the Latino community by far is the largest community within our immigrant community. We are at the point now in the history of North Carolina where there are more US-born Latinos than foreign-born Latinos. We have more people eligible to vote than we've ever had. And yet, the numbers are abysmal. How do we get individuals that can vote, vote? How do we get individuals that can naturalize to naturalize? We have significant portions of our immigrant community that have been here for extended periods of time that could naturalize but don't. How do we get past the cultural barriers? How do we get past the block that often comes up around, if I become a US citizen, somehow I lose this part of myself. I lose this identity that's very important to me. I'm off on tangents, so go ahead, reel me back.
No, you. That is all, and that was the question. Is what can we do? This is the point of this program is asking folks that are out there doing the work, what is it going to take? What can we do? So I think you were offering some great insights for those of us that are not in a position in government entities. There's different roles that we can all play. You touched on something earlier, which was language access, and that reminds me that I remember reading when the designation as a welcoming city, one of the things was that the city of Charlotte has pledged to improve language access, develop workforce opportunities, and strengthen particularly that aspect of workforce opportunities is where I wanted to touch on a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we understand the policies when you talk about language access. I think we understand when you talk about working with community organizations. That was another pledge of the city. You want to strengthen the ties with organizations that are serving the community. But for workforce development opportunities for immigrants, what is that maybe going to look like, or how's that going? I wonder if you can share it with us a little bit, because that's very unique, how to implement something specific for the immigrant community.
Yeah. So the city in that respect serves as a convener, getting parties together to better highlight the challenges, the specific challenges that immigrant communities face. And our immigrant community is incredibly diverse, right? Not just by color, not just by race, but by identity, by the ability to access opportunities based on legal status, et cetera. And so really helping people to understand the complexities, figuring out where the low-hanging fruit are. I think one of the biggest challenges and one of the most frustrating aspects of working to help people understand is that there's so many opportunities that people don't even think through. So quick story, and Susanna may have heard me say this before. You know, a couple years back, we have over the last 5 years, had an influx of Venezuelan migrants due to what's occurring in that country and policies that have detrimentally impacted large groups. And there was a point a couple years back where the executive director of the Latin American Coalition, Jose Hernandez Paris, says to me, one of the individuals we were serving was a neurosurgeon in Venezuela and is cutting fish in a fish market here in Charlotte. We don't take advantage of the talent we have in this city. We have immigrants across, that's part of the immigrant story, right? So I think back 30 years, and my uncle came from Colombia, and he was a chemist there, but a cab driver in Queens, right? We don't take advantage of what we have, and we have gaps in our workforce. We have these large holes that we can't fill locally, but we have these people that are sitting on the sidelines, basically, that are more than willing to do whatever it takes to provide for their family and provide for the community that they now call home, and we don't afford them the opportunities because there's policy blocking it. And so there's models that can be incorporated. The state of Ohio actually did a recredentialing process through Ohio State where they worked to get universities in Nepal, where we actually have a large Nepalese community here in Charlotte, over 2,000 families, to certify degrees from there. And now you have individuals that have this incredible upward mobility. What they did education-wise is now applicable here. And we have so many of those opportunities that we don't take advantage of. So as the city, I think in part, it's bringing up that issue. It's speaking it to the individuals that have power. It's ensuring that organizations like Charlotte Works are mindful of that dynamic. And it's helping to ensure that we as a city recognize the interconnectedness of our issues, right? What's happening with immigrants is no different than what happens with a lot of other segments of our community. We become laser focused on one particular issue, not realizing that if we pulled out a little bit, we'd see that there's a solution for it.
So when you mentioned that the city working as a convener, of course, when people think about workforce development from the city, you mentioned the danger of looking into the comments, but sometimes you can help it, and you notice some comments like, oh, what, the city is going to hire all of these people? Of course, that's not what you just mentioned, but I wonder what other challenges do you anticipate to be able to successfully do that work that you want to, the policies that you want to implement?
There's the challenge of public perception. There's the challenge of a state legislature that has shown itself to be diametrically opposed to a lot of these ways of addressing these issues. There's the challenge of, can we upskill individuals? Can we prioritize English as a second language? One of the things we do is we work with I've had more organizations come to me in the last year saying, hey, I want to employ immigrants. I don't care what their legal status is. I need bodies right now, right? Okay, you want to do that. Can you provide English as a second language on site? Can you carve out an hour to an hour and a half of the workday so this individual can get that skill set and benefit your workplace, right? So ensuring that we're having those conversations addresses some of it. We're going to continue to run into this challenge until we change the perspective. I'll give you a case in point. CATS, Charlotte Area Transit System. There's 300 open bus driver positions right now. The bus that is most used in the city is the one that goes up Central Avenue, the immigrant corridor of Charlotte. The easy way to address this, or in my perspective easy, but there's layers to it, is marketing to refugees, ensuring that we can create a pipeline for CDLs, targeting those individuals that need an opportunity and would love to work for the city, would love to get a pension, right? Things that can't be offered at every other job. So it's really thinking differently.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer, because I think that pinpoints to specific needs and specific areas. Levine Museum is a cultural institution, so there is a different role that we play in the community. And in your perspective, in your role, I wondered, what can Levine Museum do? And I incorporate cultural institutions and all of us and everybody, watching the recording, depending on where they fit in this ecosystem in the city. They might be working for private corporations or anything. But looking at Levine Museum and cultural institutions, what can we do to foster a welcoming city?
I can't think of a better organization to highlight in this respect. You, as an organization, tell the immigrant story, right? So the Levine, in the space you were once in, I know in the space that you'll be going into, have continued to be a place where immigrants are seen, where our persons from the Congo and Vietnam and Colombia all feel as if they're a part of the broader Charlotte story. I think that's so important. Affording a platform where stories could be told, where that connectedness to the shared human experience can be given, ensuring that people can see people as people, and not as an issue, not as a challenge, not as a problem, not as a dollar sign, but as a fellow human being.
Thank you. And I saw a couple of noddings in the middle of your questions, so I want to open it up. I don't want to keep asking you more questions, so I want to see if anybody has a question for Federico. We can pass around a mic and see if any of you have some questions. To make sure that I give a space.
Is that something, dual citizenship?
Yeah, people can absolutely have two citizenships. I think where a lot of people get lost, and being honest, I didn't know this until I came into this position. When you take on U.S. citizenship, one of the things you say is that you renounce all other citizenships. It's not true. You can have dual citizenship. I think, but it's a perception issue, right? So great question. because a lot of people perceive that to be true, and we've created a system where we've kind of lean into that perception, but it's not true. You could absolutely be a Mexican citizen and a US citizen simultaneously.
Because I've heard on that aspect, like for a Mexican, that if they did, they would feel some type of way if they just became a U.S. citizen. Then they, you know, when they go back home and it's like you're a traitor.
Yeah, yeah. Who'll know? Is my question, right? who are you telling? So, but yeah, no, I get it. There's a cultural piece, there's an identity piece. But if you're gonna live in a space, why not afford yourself the opportunity to make decisions that will impact how you live in that space? And naturalization affords you the opportunity to vote and decide who represents you, who serves as your voice, may afford you the opportunity to be elected, right? And so that's so vitally important, especially at this stage in the history of this country.
Well, I got one more.
Sure.
Okay, so when you speak on voting and reaching out into the community, so therefore it would take someone that looks like that person to talk to them and have them to understand the power in their vote.
Yep.
Because so many times we say, my vote doesn't matter. But if our vote did not matter, it wouldn't be as hard as it is. So if we can go back to grassroots and hit the streets, that might be the solution.
Yeah, I'm immensely proud. I don't hold a political position, and I'm tasked to be neutral in my role, but I'm immensely proud of organizations like Tu Voto Cuenta, who really focus in on that and try to get that message out, try to really work at the grassroots level to help people better understand.
You mentioned language access, and I was wondering if you could expand on that and what that actually means.
Yeah. So language access is the process where, as a community, you ensure that anyone whose first language is not English can easily access services, resource, documents, translated meetings in a equitable fashion, right? So if I'm making it available to an English speaker, I should be as easily able to make it available to whatever other individual there is in the crowd. Think of it like you would with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The city just got to a point where we now do sign language translation in our meetings. Next week, actually this Monday's meeting will be the first meeting where we do closed captioning in Spanish, right? So we're getting further along, but it's this idea of really creating an access point, ensuring that individuals get the same information in the same way as much as possible. Now, there's federal requirements to this, and so we're not mandated to offer translations apart from you hitting a particular threshold. In the city of Charlotte, that's 50,000 individuals. The one community of immigrants that meets that is the Spanish-speaking community. And so ensuring first and foremost that that community has the resources in their language, but then also making sure that we can have documents and other information translated for other communities, like the second largest language spoken, Vietnamese.
Perfect. We have space for one more question. Yep.
I'm always interested in how you empower the youth. So like the immigrant youth community, how do you incorporate them into what's going on, and how do you empower them to feel what you're talking about, to feel like a part of this, and to look forward to that being a long-term contribution to the new community they are being welcomed into, hopefully?
Yeah, great question. So I think, again, the division of governments in the city of Charlotte, I'm not in the school system, and there's a lot of perceptions around, well, you should be, right? It should all be one unified government, like the place I left. It's not. With that said, we take advantage of opportunities. So for instance, one of the big works that the City Council has undertaken through committee this last year, on a committee that I serve as a staff liaison for, is creating an equity and governance framework. How will we prioritize the use of a racial equity lens in our policy making? I did a whole presentation to Generation Nation, the youth council in that organization, to get them up to speed on what that was and ask their input. It's really us, like anything else, bringing information to people, allowing them to digest it, and giving them the opportunity to afford us input and feedback that would help us further cull what it is they want and what it is we're capable of doing. So it's just taking advantage of opportunities to get in front of youth and really sharing with them the importance of their voice.
The right kids would inspire the vote that she's talking about. That message delivered from them to
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I can't say that this is an actual stat, but it's one that I say. So I don't remember where I got it from. How about that? There's a researcher in the room, so hold that against me, Andrew. So I remember reading, I think from Kids First, which is a large research organization that focuses on youth, that the city of Charlotte, 33% of young people, now this is years back, this is at least 6 years ago, 33% of young people were either an immigrant or the child of an immigrant parent. A third, right? It's significant. Andrew, you work at the Charlotte Bilingual Pre-K. I'm sure you see this on a daily basis, right? That voice is so very important, and ensuring that they are part of our process, ensuring that we're prioritizing them being able to share with us what they want for their future. All we're doing is holding space for the next generation.
Thank you. I don't know if I saw one more hand back there. No. So I have one last question for you before we finish the conversation here. For you, for Federico, who has worked in education system, who grew up in Queens, New York, the largest Colombian neighborhood in the country, what does it mean for you to be a welcoming city? Not the policy, but what does it mean for Federico to be a welcoming city?
I had a conversation when I first came in, and we talked about everything but the topic tonight. We talked about our family experiences and some of the challenges we faced, and that's what a welcoming city is. It's this idea that you can start a conversation with another person and find the commonalities, that you can feel at home and comfortable being able to share your story. Being a welcoming city is a platform, is a safe space to do that. It's this idea that we, again, are all human, should treat each other as such, and find those commonalities, those things we share in common. We're not going to agree on anything. I'm sure we don't, right? But we have enough things that we do agree on that we can have a fruitful conversation, build a really deep connection, and become better for it. That's what a welcoming city is for me. And just for clarity, Queens is the most diverse place in the world, right? So when I go up East Charlotte, I feel like I'm home. It's that diversity, that richness that makes us better as a community.
That's right. You also have a large, correct, this is, again, another quote that I read, but I not be completely sure, but I also read that it may have the largest concentration of Jamaicans in the country.
I mean, Southeast Asians, I lived in South Ozone Park, Queens. I'm actually going home next week, so it's funny we're talking about this. Largest Indo-Caribbean population outside of the Caribbean is in the hometown that I grew up in, right? So it's those things. We have that same richness here. I mean, there's blocks on Central Avenue where you have an Ethiopian restaurant next to a Central American restaurant, next to a Jewish deli, it's that's so unique and makes us such a great city. This idea that all of us can cohabitate in this way, and we all benefit because we can make multiple stops all at once, right? So it's that makes us a great place, a welcoming place.
Perfect. Thank you. I say it was the last question, but last question. Chris Barbie, our Director of Development, will appreciate this question since you were talking a lot about Queens. Are you a Mets or a Yankees fan?
I'm a Yankees fan. I'm a Yankees fan because being a Knicks and a Jets fan is a miserable existence unless you balance it.
Well, thank you, Federico, for joining us today. Be sure to check the website for Levine Museum for our upcoming programs, the city's website for more of the work out of Federico's office. We're going to take a short, tiny break, and now we're going to have a special performance and demonstration by the NC Brazilian Arts Project. So bear with us for a few minutes.